Welcome, ladies and gentlemen. So I will be today bringing you an exclusive as to why Warner Brothers is sticking by Ezra Miller and The Flash. It's actually quite eye-opening to me. It solidified quite a lot of stuff. I was like, you know what? This actually does make sense. I don't think they should still do it, but I can now see the justification that Warner Brothers are bringing to the table to basically keep The Flash going. They're really stuck between a rock and a hard place. They either have to take a massive L or just potentially take a massive L anyway because they've got to release the film. So, you know, again, you can take it with a pinch of salt if you want, but I stand by this source 99.9% genuinely. And those that know of my previous reports, say on Batgirl for instance, I was vindicated on that and proven completely right. So take it with a pinch of salt if you like, but this is an exclusive, so enjoy. So there's been several screenings of The Flash, with alternate endings actually. They're roughly the same film, but there are alternate takes and scenes used in the second screening that was revealed. There's been a few, so currently to date I know of 2 versions of The Flash. Now in both screenings, audiences were noticeably more invested with The Flash than the screening of Batgirl. So when we're talking about sort of Batgirl versus The Flash and why they haven't cancelled it, audiences are actually seemingly invested in The Flash to a certain degree. Now, obviously that received a horrible response, and that was one of the catalysts to it being cancelled. And also as well, actually pretty good reactions overall. And Aquaman 2 has had not the best response either, but The Flash has actually had a good response in test screenings. It's probably the best test screened DC movie currently ready to drop, because Batgirl had the same test screening reaction as Black Adam. So that kind of puts it into perspective, just as an FYI. So what are the positives of The Flash? And I'll also be breaking down Michael Keaton's role as an FYI, and that is first and foremost the positive. So Michael Keaton's return as Batman is just as good as what fans are hoping for. Keaton doesn't miss a beat from his portrayal in Batman 89 or Returns. So it's very much like, it very much feels like Michael Keaton's back. You know, like it doesn't feel like he's not been in the role, if that makes sense, which is very hard to do. But he feels older and wiser. Keaton feels like the Batman here, even outshining Affleck, who does appear in The Flash. Now, I'm just repeating what my source has told me, just as an FYI. So I don't know firsthand if Keaton does outshine the Affleck, which I know that will annoy a few people, but it is what it is. So he does actually appear, by the way. Affleck appears in about 3 scenes in The Flash, but never with Keaton. Now in Batgirl, Michael Keaton felt like fan service and was there to prop her up as a Mary Sue, but in The Flash, he's working, he's fighting alongside Barry Allen while actually mentoring Barry Allen, so Ezra Miller's character. There's one scene alone where he takes on 8 to 11 prison guards himself to protect both Barrys, because there's 2, that had the audiences cheering as it happened. But he doesn't speak in long exchanges, so he's very nuanced, very restrained, you know, humbled, I guess, you know, very thoughtful in his comments. He feels like the smartest man in the room, and most of the film, he seems like he's actually 4 steps ahead of everyone else. Audiences loved him. They genuinely loved him. So the other high point is actually Ezra Miller, which is shocking to hear. But it's the story of 2 Barrys. So there's a pre-Man of Steel Barry and then a post-Justice League Barry. And it's the story about those 2 individual Barrys. Miller's take on a younger version of himself and the older version, post-Justice League, of Barry Allen is actually the heart of this film. And this is where we start to get into the issues that Warner Brothers are having trying to release this film. So Miller does a good job balancing both versions, and each have their own strong character arcs, and the whole story centers around their relationship with their mother. So post-Justice League Barry and pre-Man of Steel Barry have their similarities, but they are their own individual characters. So he apparently does a really good job, and this is where we start to get into the issues, is that he's playing 2 different characters. So you can't actually just deep fake over it. It would be really difficult to find someone who can do 2 different characters, pull it off to the same degree, get it test screen and then released. Like that is actually quite a major job, and I will give them that. Now the story really builds on how their different pasts shaped their separate views of the world, their relationships, and what that means for them, especially with their mother. And all leads to a boiling point for each Barry. Again, like Keaton's Batman, audiences were noticeably invested with Miller and both depictions of Barry through the film. This is only the positives, we'll get to the negatives in a minute. Now the second cut of The Flash did actually use better alternate takes that, because this is filmed a little bit, or edited a little bit later, it toned down Ezra Miller's crazy attitude that he sort of puts on screen, you know, in his acting. The sort of like, woo, flamboyancy. And that was actually mainly with pre-Man of Steel Barry. So it's separating the two, Justice League Barry, Man of Steel Barry, as that's the sort of difference between the two. And that character actually felt more believable as a result of that, apparently. So overall, The Flash just has more going on with its story, themes and characters than any recent DCEU films. The director, Andy Muschietti, makes the film feel cinematic, no shaky cam, as an FYI, and event-worthy. So it feels like an event film. This is what we're talking about. Like, this is actually one of the highest test-screened films DC has at the moment. Like, which is a shame, because they've hedged everything on this film. Now, you know, again, event-worthy, while taking the time to make you care about Barry Allen and reintroducing Keaton in a way where he lives up to expectations and still supports the story. A good example of this is Maguire and Garfield in No Way Home, but with more screen time. So Michael Keaton has a lot of screen time in this film. Now, more importantly, there is one of the few DCEU films where you actually feel something for the characters and are invested in their story and do genuinely leave with some excitement about what may come next. So people were actually genuinely all in on this film. But here's the problems, and as to why they can't change anything. Some are fixable, by the way. Some are fixable. So, the problems themselves. The opening scene feels too much like Whedon's Justice League. Over-the-top action mixed with comedy. It doesn't work well. It's very close to the previous leaks, and it doesn't match the tone for the rest of the film. They could remove it, or just tone it down in post. So, they've test screened it. That could be changed. Sasha Caller's Supergirl. Not on par with Keaton or Miller. She feels wooden, doesn't add much to the character, and in one scene is so violent towards guards who held her captive. That's right, she's been held captive. You wonder if it's smart to actually let her free. And it makes it hard to root for her as a result of that. Now, with reshoots, which they may have done already, we know that they did some reshoots over the summer, they could change this, just as an FYI. Now, there is a villain reveal at the end of the film that happens in both cuts, and it utilises practical effects, and it looks shit, was what my source said. It's like a Power Rangers villain, basically. That's how bad it is. Genuinely, Power Rangers villain of the week. It could easily be, could be blended over with CGI. We don't know. It could be a placeholder, so who knows? But it is there for now, and it looks terrible. Now, most of the negative responses to the test screening actually comes from the ending, because both cuts of the film that have screened so far do have Superman erased from the DCEU. Now, this received notable negative responses. That's the only thing which was notable negative responses from basically everyone. The whole film, basically, that was it. They hated that part. Just erased, gone. Now, Warner Brothers did actually notice this. Warner Brothers did take note of this, so we'll see what happens moving forwards. But here's the unfixable thing, and the reason as to why you clicked on this video, and why Warner Brothers can't get rid of this thing, I guess. It's Ezra Miller. He's the unfixable thing. He is the issue, right? So much of the film works solely based on his scenes playing against himself. And the dynamic between pre-Man of Steel Barry and post-Justice League Barry and Keaton's Batman, so they're all sort of linearly together. Because it's three people interacting with one another, one person, two characters, plus another. you physically can't remove them. You can't blend over the top of them. And because before I was like, oh, well, maybe they've got another person to stand in as, you know, Barry Allen. But no, they just, you can't remove it. You know, I get it now. Like you've shot yourself in the foot because you've got one person playing two characters. Now, Miller gives both Barry's subtle nuances that he builds on throughout the film, and that really works and makes you care for Barry. Barry Allen's journey, sorry. Now, there's a scene in particular where post-Justice League Barry becomes... And this is where I think... And I discussed this with my source, and I said... They're unintentionally hanging a lantern on his own behaviour. Because post-Justice League Barry becomes self-aware of how others view him by how pre-Man of Steel Barry interacts and carries himself. And you basically see the older Barry Allen shift. So post-Justice League Barry then becomes the Flash that we know, very serious, toned it down. And it's layered, so this performance has quite a lot of layers to it. So he's almost playing three versions of himself. And that's all to do with Miller. But that's hanging a lantern on a really bad action. Like, oh yeah, self-aware, people view you like an arsehole, do they? Miller in real life, like, goodness me. And my source ended with saying that sucks. You know, it sucks because of what Miller has done in his personal life. It sucks because you can tell that The Flash feels like a film made by people that genuinely cared about the character, the story that also comes across on screen. And it sucks because, unlike Batgirl, it is one of the few DCEU films that feels like the film DCEU fans have wanted for a while. And it sucks because Miller may impact the entire release of the film, with the worst case it being shelved. So you can kind of see why Warner Brothers now are banking so heavily on it. It's the most positively test screened DC film. Pisses all over Aquaman 2, pisses all over Batgirl, literally anything else. Like, it just wipes the floor with everything. People were invested, people liked it, but people didn't like certain elements, but things which can be changed if they're going to. Again, like, Warner Brothers noticed that this film wiped Superman clean. We're now getting reports that he's probably going to come back for Black Adam. We don't know. It's really all over the place. So there you have it, ladies and gents. My exclusive to you. I hope you enjoyed it. I'd love to hear your thoughts, so drop them down below. Again, those that doubt, it's fine. I've been vindicated on most things that I say as an exclusive. And I say, hey, I stand by my source. So please do leave your thoughts down below. Ladies and gents, thanks so much for watching. I know this is kind of boring, it's just me sat here, but it's information dump. I'm not going to put fancy stuff over the screen. You know, I don't judge your intellect solely on what is on the screen. I think you can enjoy this as more of a podcast type video. I don't want to insult your intelligence. There you go. Cheers, ladies and gents. Take care.